All right, so we're to the last step of cellular respiration, which is the electron transport chain and chemiosmosis. I've already drawn this out just to save some time. So out here is the, not outer, the intermembrane space, and here is the matrix, just for orientation. And in the electron transport chain, there's three important things to remember. One being all the CO2 from glycolysis has been oxidized and there's none remaining. Two is that the energy for this red, they're all red, but this last red pump here is ATP synthase. ATP synthase is what gives us that 34 ATP at the end. I'm getting ahead of myself, but the hydrogen ions that are needed for ATP synthase are brought from the matrix to the inner membrane space by what is called these proteins here, these three, and they're powered by two molecules that we've seen earlier from our other processes. I'm going to fix this up, which are NADH and FADH2. They power these pumps to move hydrogen from the matrix to the inner membrane space. So I'll draw that out now. So I'll use pink actually. Whoa. I just threw my marker. So we have hydrogen and it moves up and starts to fill the inner membrane space. So hydrogen moves up and this space becomes more and more filled with hydrogen. It's important to remember that this is constantly happening. So there's always a movement up of hydrogen ions, but at the same time, we'll see later, there's also a movement down of hydrogen. Just fill this up. In the electron transport chain, the third thing to remember, as I realize I run out of room, is all the energy for ATP synthase, chemiosmosis, comes from the electron transport chain. So those three key points keep them in mind as I draw out our diagram here. So as you remember from previous steps, we have NADH. Just draw two little dashes for the electrons. I actually forgot to draw something here. So I'm getting further along. There's another protein there. They go, I should label these 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we also have FADH2, which also has some negatively charged electrons. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, we have this big diagram, but there's no flowing chain. There's no connection between all of this. Well, that's where this comes in. So, we can start. Our chain will be the orange here. So NADH, oh, got some blue in it. Check that out. Yay. So the NADH is oxidized, becoming what it originally was, which is NAD+. It loses these 2 electrons. These disappear. I'm just going to check to make sure we're not blurry. All right, good. And they start to follow the electron transport chain, and I'll use brown. And they're carried by these brown electron carriers and follow this orange chain. The orange chain will come up, higher energy, and then start to decrease. And we'll see later what the product of this is. And also, the 2 electrons from FADH are brought into there, also by an electron carrier. I'll draw one further down the line. And that also takes these 2 electrons here. So as we're carrying down the line, energy is being lost. It's being used up. That's going to these protein pumps, and they're pumping out the hydrogen. They're getting rid of it. They're pumping it out. Oh, I just forgot to mention, once FADH is oxidized, as you remember, we had FAD. So that's the product of the oxidation of FADH2 is the FAD. Where was I? I believe I was talking about the hydrogen, the proton gradient. So as electrons move along, they're giving energy to these pumps. Hydrogen's being pumped out. And then we start to lose energy because we keep giving it to the pumps. And then we lose energy, keep pumping out. And our final product ends up being H2O, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, but in about 3 seconds it will. So we have all these hydrogen ions. We use black for this one instead. And we also have a little bit of oxygen floating around. And that is how we get the water molecule that is produced.